Welcome everybody to another edition of Think with a Drink. This is the weekly webinar series brought to you by the Aries Foundation for Financial Education. And this week's episode, we are talking about a topic or conversation, Craig, that we get all the time, which is, are annuities bad? So next slide, before we go into that, just a little quick housekeeping for everyone. Just know this is being recorded. We are going to have a chat feature that it will be available for, but you don't have to worry, there's no microphones, there's no camera in terms of that. And with that chat feature, you will be able to ask questions of us. The other is that my co-pilot, who I will introduce, is here to keep me on time. So speaking of that, who are we? If you can go to the next slide. My name's Tom Alessi. I am the president of the Aries Foundation for Financial Education. I have been in financial services for 24 years now. I'm an investment advisor. It means I act as a fiduciary whenever giving guidance or advice to any of my clients. I want to bring my vice president co-president. Look at, I already pumped him up. My vice president, Craig, if you want to introduce yourself.
It's unrecorded, I got a promotion. So I'm Craig Richardson. I'm the vice president of the Aries Foundation. I've been in financial services a little over 18 years now. And I specialize in working with families and small businesses to help them understand their future goals and have a better relationship with their money.
And Craig will be chiming in as we go along. You can go to the next slide. Just real quick, as we said, this is brought to you by the Aries Foundation for Financial Education. You know, we are a nonprofit. You can visit the website. It's www.ariesfoundation.org. And the mission behind Aries is trying to help everyone have a better relationship with their money. Because whether you realize it or not, you are in a relationship with your money. And just like every other personal relationship that you have, there are behaviors and emotional triggers that happen that cause us to act, well, a little irrationally sometimes when it comes to our money and finances. That's all that we, myself, Craig, the rest of the Aries team tries to do, is to help you have a little better handle on money and finances. So you can go to the next slide. And so there's a lot of words on the screen. I'm not going to read all those words, okay? So just basically know that we're a nonprofit. We do this for educational and informational purposes only. We share this content. We share it on our website. We share it on our YouTube channel. We share it on New TV. That's the folks that help us with these programs. All we ask is that if you're going to share it, you do it in an educational manner. We recommend that if you do have a question that is of a legal, tax, or financial, that you seek out the help of a professional. Next slide. God, I got through that. So now we get to the fun part of all of this. We call it Think with a Drink. And the reason is that some of these topics get to be a little bit overwhelming, a little bit tense, heavy, a little bit anxiety prone. So we can't think of a better way to go through this to make it a little bit casual, a little bit relaxed, than to have something cold to sip on. For today's entertainment, we are having, this is called Mango Cart. This is a wheat beer infused with mango.
Alrighty.
So it is a wheat beer, so like any wheat beers, you know, probably done better with, you know, some spicy barbecue type of thing. If you got some chicken wings or some ribs that you're throwing on the grill, certainly would probably go well with that. But we'll say skål and try your mango wheat.
Because mango's a fruit, this is good for me, right?
It can be good for you. So you're very pungent there, very pungent with the mango.
A lot of mango there.
You get that in the nose flavor there, but the taste is actually very good. Craig was a little afraid because I've led him down this path before where he was not happy with that. So next slide.
Yes, I was the guinea pig on another mango beer. Yes.
All right. So our agenda for today, we're going to talk. Why? Are annuities bad? Why is that? What is an annuity? What can it do? What really it isn't or shouldn't be compared to, and then we'll go through the question of, does it really make sense for you to have? So the next slide, and you're going to have to click through this a little bit because it's like, why are annuities bad? Is it because everybody says they are, right? So anywhere you turn, anywhere you read, anything you look at, it pretty much, you have this constantly, and you can hit that again because it'll pop up because there'll be another one. There you go. Thank you. That says, pretty much everything you look at or read says annuities are bad, right? Which it's okay if we're talking about specific types of annuities. But for some annuities, these are actually tools, like one of the most prevalent or that everybody is aware of or has experience or gets to is Social Security.
Right.
Social Security is absolutely an annuity. That's the way it's based on. And I don't hear anyone ever saying, gee, this is bad, right?
I don't want to take this.
I don't want to take this. Like, don't give me that Social Security thing. The other form of an annuity that's really prevalent in not as much in today's society, but certainly in your parents' world, is a pension plan.
Yes.
A corporate pension plan, that is absolutely an annuity, right? So this is a stream of income that is being paid out based off a lump sum. In the case of Social Security, something that you've paid into. In the case of the corporate pension, this is an accrual of years of earnings.
Right, and if you're a teacher or a firefighter or a police officer, you understand, pension is a big part of, your income source in retirement. That's why you stick there for 20 years, just to get that pension. Yep.
Just to be able to get that pension. That's an annuity, okay? So that's, at its definition, what an annuity is. We'll talk about some of the other forms of an annuity and some of the reasons that some of this white noise comes in with some of that stuff. But the idea is to think of it as the idea of cash flow. And specifically, like Craig said, cash flow in retirement. Because one of the things with retirement is all about cash flow. Because cash flow equals certainty, and certainty takes the pressure off of money. So having that cash flow, whether it's Social Security, whether it's a pension, whatever it may be in retirement, is a good thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Next slide. Our slides disappear. Oh, there we go. The types of annuities. I should have known that's where we were going, but it's okay. All right, so annuities break down into really three different types, right? So you have fixed annuities, you have these things called index annuities, and then you've got this animal called a variable annuity. We'll start with a fixed annuity. A fixed annuity is just that. It's like a CD.
Yes.
I get a certain rate of return for X number of years, and they go anywhere from like 3 years to like 10 or 15 or whatever, something like that.
Yeah, the longest ones are 15 or 16 years now, right?
And it's a fixed rate of return just like your CD returns for you, right? So that's for somebody who's ultra conservative, wants to park the money. Very similar. Actually, the rates are probably a little bit better than what you get in a bank with a CD.
They typically are, and actually, right now rates are getting even better just because, the market's down, but the Fed's raised rates, so that has a positive effect on annuitization rates or income rates.
These are the fixed rates, right?
The fixed rates,
that's what's there. So an indexed annuity says the money's going to go in. You're not going to be participating in the market. What's going to happen is that you are going to be getting that as a sort of a shadow or a marker to base against. And usually it's the S&P 500, just so you know that in terms of an index, it's a broad-based market index that they use for that. And what it says is the money goes in, no matter what happens, the money can never go down. You can't lose money.
Correct. I mean, in an index annuity, depending on any of the features or fees that may be involved, right, because you got to disclose all of that.
Right.
Typically what it is you can't lose money in the marketplace. You're getting a participation rate on how the market increases.
Right.
Right, so you kind of get a little step up. Like you said, it's not directly invested in the market itself, but based off an index. Like you said, the S&P 500 would be an index, and based on the performance of that index over time periods, that's how you're credited.
Right, and so again, very conservative, very safe, not going to get a huge return with this. And then you come to this thing called a variable annuity. And this is where a lot of that sort of, let's call it bad, press, sort of knock comes from. Because a variable annuity ultimately is a basket of just like any other investment. It's got mutual funds in it or ETFs or any type of positions. There's fees and expenses that are on top of that, and you're in the market.
Right, exactly. So with a variable annuity, it's the same thing. You're basically invested in the market, and typically the thing that gets people to do that is because they put different riders on there, like death benefit riders or guaranteed income riders or those types of things. But the negative is the fact that you have risk, right? So the reason you want to go to annuities is to get away from risk, and now you're into risk.
Right.
And sometimes the fees can be quite high inside of those vehicles as well. So.
Right, and that's where the knock comes from, is you do get that overwhelming, like, okay, wait, so it's high fees which drag performance. That's just generally what's going to happen. And then like Craig said, it's going to expose you to risk. So in a market like today, where the S&P's down 20+%, you could be down 25 or 26 depending on the fees that are on top of that.
Right.
And that gets harder to bring it back because those fees are always going to drag.
Correct, right. You're always going to have to make up for some of that. Mm-hmm.
Next slide, please. So, what can an annuity do, right? So we talked about this, where one of the things that an annuity can do is create that own income stream, right? Give you that cash flow in retirement.
Absolutely.
And this is one of the biggest things that people really have to be, especially retirees, whether we're pre-retiree or a retired individual, you need to be thinking about is cash flow. Social Security only provides so much. You need to be then covering whatever the rest of the expenses are. That's why we say that cash flow equals certainty. Certainty takes the pressure off of money, because having that cash flow can do that. The other part that it mentioned on there was the whole idea of being able to stretch out those required minimum distributions. There's a way to do that with a QLAC, where you're able to push the required minimum distribution off into the future with a qualified living annuity.
Oh, absolutely. The other thing too is that, a lot of times with people, let's say you're maximizing your 401k contribution or your retirement contributions. Annuities are another way to put money away, and the earnings are tax deferred.
Right.
They don't come out tax free like a Roth, and you're putting the money in after tax, so it's not like your 401k, but you are not paying any taxes on the gains as the annuity grows until
Correct.
you start taking those monies out. And then there's even more favorable ways to take out that, so you're not taxed all at once when you do take money out. So there's a lot of good reasons to have annuities. I don't think annuities are all bad. One thing I tell people is that they say, well, I heard about an annuity and it's a terrible thing. I said, look, if I take a hammer and I build you a house, you're going to think, wow, that's great. You use that hammer and you build me a house. If I take that same hammer and hit you in the head with it, you're going to go, that's a terrible hammer. Right?
What did you do?
The issue isn't the tool, it's the way the tool is being used.
Right.
Right. And so you have to know how to make that particular tool. Now, in some instances, a variable annuity might be a great piece for someone's situation. In other words, it might not fit.
Right.
So it's really about understanding what the person is trying to accomplish with that annuity before you can judge whether that annuity is the right fit for that particular problem.
Yeah, and just know, like Craig said, there are a lot of different versions, variations, and tools and strategies that you have available to you when looking at them. We just want to make sure that in certain circumstances, you're just not using this and just saying, no, I've heard bad things, I don't want to ever look at it. Because that's not the reason. The whole idea is to be taking the step back and saying, wait, could this strategy possibly help me offset some of those future expenses that I have, or offset some of that burden that I have later on in life? And those are the things that you need to be thinking about and looking at, and that's how you can build a strategy with it. Next slide, please. So we talked a little bit about this. This is creating your own personal pension plan, right? So for most of the population, the pension plan is gone, right? The big corporate, I worked for the organization for 40 years. I got my gold watch, and now I've retired, and they're going to pay me a pension. That doesn't really exist anymore. All of the burden has been placed on the individual worker, the employee, to have that money available for them in retirement. And that's where the biggest part of this comes from, right? Is that this issue, this concern that all of the burden is now on you as the individual. And like we talked about, it's all about cash flow. And if Social Security is your only means of cash flow, then what else are you going to do to offset that? Because you have to think of it almost like a gap. Like my total expenses are here, Social Security is going to provide this.
Right.
That gap that's missing there, that's on you. And how are you going to fill that in? And taking it in distributions, and we talk about this and other things that we do, and specifically about not having pensions and distribution and withdrawal strategies. What a personal pension plan can do is give you that other aspect of that cash flow in retirement to offset that risk.
Right. So when I do retirement planning for individuals, the biggest thing they are looking for is security. When I go into retirement, I want to know that my bills are paid. And there's a couple of reasons. When you're younger and you're managing your own money, you go, well, I can manage all this stuff. As you get older, eventually you lose either the ability or the desire to manage your own money. But you still need to know that cash flow is coming in, and you want it to be in the easiest form possible. So once again, like Tom said, if you can have that cash flow, then it takes the burden off of the rest of your assets. Those other monies that you have, the liquidity piece, where now you're using that for your fund or your expenses that are unanticipated. Right. So you're looking for predictability in retirement when it comes to cash flow.
And one of the ways that often talked about that we have with individuals when we talk to people about, because like you're talking about, having that cash flow also then gives you permission to spend your money, right? Because that's one of the things that we talk with a lot of older individuals, you know, whether they're retired or retiring or getting there, and it's this, I can't spend it because I'm worried about
running out
this or that or running out of money or whatever the case may be. And by having that guaranteed stream of income, you're condensing that. You're making that ability to say, oh, I can spend that money because I know I've got my expenses covered because I've got cash flow.
Right. Now, another one of the things that people get hit with when it comes to a negative with annuities is the annuity claiming strategy. Right. So, Grandpa had an annuity. He put all of his money into it, and 2 years later he died, and Grandma got nothing. Right.
I get that one.
Yeah. So it's about, you know, there's lots of different options when it comes to claiming strategies with annuities, but there's also lots of different options to make sure you're getting the best, we call it, distribution rate when it comes to retirement income. And those are some advanced strategies we won't get into in today's topic. But just know that annuities absolutely have a place. And any retirement piece you read now will talk about having that fixed income piece on top of Social Security. Should be a part of any good retirement plan.
Right. It is a percentage to it. Okay, next slide. So this is, you know, what an annuity isn't, or what an annuity should never be compared to. And those are shares of stock. So just so we're clear what those, you know, I understand nobody in today's world would ever actually see a share of stock.
Did you ever get a certificate like that anymore?
Not anymore, no. But so annuities are not stocks, right? They're not really investments. They shouldn't be viewed as an investment. That's not what an annuity should be viewed as. As Craig said, the first part of that should be this stream of income, this cash flow in retirement. That's where the annuity should first be viewed as a personal pension plan in a way.
Right.
The other should be that sort of fail-safe or offset to, say, bonds, right? Because bonds have now, for the past decade plus, returned virtually nothing, and actually are heading for an even worse market as we go forward here into 2023 with everything that's going on between the Fed and interest rates and everything else.
Right, and then you're only comparing one type of annuity because you're talking about fixed interest annuities. Right. When you're talking about bonds.
Well, you're also talking about the indexed.
Bonds can be indexed,
Well, no, I'm just saying that the offset between looking at, instead of putting your money into a bond or into a bond fund, say, using that fixed annuity or that indexed annuity, because you're more than likely going to get a better return out over time without the risk.
Right, and then you talk about whether, and you bring this up a lot, whether you're buying an individual bond or you're buying into a bond fund. Right, and how that can be not the result you were looking for when you're buying funds because of the way that those are traded.
Yes, and that's it's one of the concerns today for a lot of investors is I'm trying to find safety, right? Nobody has any idea what's going to happen here over the next, couple of months or so into 2023 and beyond, until we get a clear understanding of what's happening.
The market will move. I know that.
Yeah, it's going to move.
Have some certainty there.
That is the case. It is going to move. We're just not sure where that's going to move. And so, a lot of times in the past, and we've talked about this a little bit, that usually the fleeing to safety was we were moving or holding positions in bonds, because bonds were supposed to be this offset, this whole idea, this modern portfolio theory that said, when one asset moves one way, the other asset moves the other way. Well, 2008, 2009, and 2022 has shown us that's not the case. Everything goes one way sometimes, and that's what happens. So having that ability to have that safety net that also then can give you that growth component. It's worth looking at as an offset to saying I was going to put my money into bonds, because the bond market is in very, very squishy ground at this point.
Well, it's a lot more variable than it should be for a bond market.
Yes, yeah, very, very good way to put that. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so are annuities bad? So there we go. We're asking the question, we're sort of throwing it out there. And so, the first part of that is, yes, they are. And you can click on the screen because it'll move it, it'll tell you that, yeah, when compared to a stock or a low-cost mutual fund, or an ETF, yeah, that's not what they're supposed to be. But when we're talking about using them for guaranteed income streams, guaranteed payouts, or as a source of planned income, well, annuities are not bad. Like we talked about, this is Social Security at its core. This is a pension plan at its core. Right. That's what they are about.
Yeah, the issue is that annuities are not a strategy. Annuities are a tool. The strategy should be how is everything around your retirement plan going to come together. Right. And the strategy could include both investments, annuities, maybe bonds. It could include many different instruments depending on your time horizons and what you're trying to achieve. So, like I said, are annuities bad? Just like any tool, depending on how you use it.
Yeah, depending on how it was dealt with, depending on the situation. A lot of the, again, I'm sort of calling it white noise that goes on with it, and some of the backlash that occurred because a lot of these were being sold, is any other way to say it, right, as a comparison to a stock or comparison to a mutual fund, without disclosing a lot of, as Craig mentioned, the fees and other things that were associated with it. And so you wound up with a lot of this what do you want to call it, bad behavior, basically, in terms of going through it?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you want to get into the history of why, annuities have gotten a bad rep, it's also because, they weren't regulated the way they are now. There were a lot of, people getting into contracts they couldn't get out of because of exorbitant fees. There was a lot of, fees being paid to advisors to get people into these contracts to keep them locked up. So there's a lot of reasons that they got, and deservedly so, got a bad rap for a long time. However, now there's a lot more regulation that goes into these annuities, a lot less abuse, and like anything, you got to have an advisor that you trust.
Yep.
You got to have someone to work with who's going to give you the straight skinny and actually build a plan that's going to be built for you. I mean, annuities are not new. If you want to really go back to history, they go back all the way to Egypt. Right. Ancient Egypt was using annuities to pay their workers.
Right, and one of the things with that, and one of the parts of it, is the idea and the concept that any, as Craig said, any plan today, any retirement plan is going to talk about cash flow. And it doesn't matter who you're talking to or how you're talking, that's where you're getting it from, is you're getting it from that idea that there needs to be cash flow, because again, cash flow equals certainty, and certainty takes the pressure off of money. Next slide, please. And so just, in terms of going through it, there's different tools out there to look at and to view and to go through on the annuity. You can go to the next slide as far as that's concerned. But it should be, we just hammered this one, in terms of having it be part of your overall plan. So are annuities bad? That depends. It depends on what you're trying to do. It depends on what your overall scheme is. Like Craig said, what's your ultimate goal? What are you trying to achieve, and how are you going to get there? That's ultimately what it's all about. As Craig mentioned, it's just a tool. It's a strategy to use as part of it, but it should not be overlooked. That would just be like saying, I'm not going to touch this or touch that because I've heard bad things about it, but it might apply to my particular situation.
Right. I mean, I would say, annuities can be, while the concept is simple, it's an exchange of money for an income stream, the annuity contracts themselves can be extremely complicated. And that's why you shouldn't try to just go out and buy an annuity on your own. Right. You really should be consulting a professional, one you trust, who can help you navigate what's best for you.
All right, next slide, please. So I think we're about ready to wrap up here in terms of the day. So just understand, for us, in terms of what we do, we make available to everybody what we call the roadmap to financial awesomeness. Just for watching today's episode, you have the ability to do this. You can see there's a calendar link, our scheduler on the bottom of the screen. You can copy and paste that, or just copy that. You can set up, and we're happy to have a conversation with you at any time. And next slide. If you ever have any questions, you can go to the website. It's www.ariesfoundation.org. You can schedule a time to meet with us, or you can shoot us an email at info@ariesfoundation.org. And on that, we're going to say thanks and have a great evening.
Ba, 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 ba.